So, Monica, I know that when you speak with new or inexperienced investors, we find this, all advisors do, that there's kind of the sense of overwhelm. Where do I even begin? So, let's start today with just kind of guiding a new or inexperienced investor how to start thinking about your investment portfolio.
Actually, where you should start is you need to determine what is the goal and what's the time horizon of that goal. So for instance, if I'm saving for a down payment on a house and that has a 4-year time horizon, that's very different than saving for retirement that might have a 25-year time horizon. And so those investments will be and should be completely different. So you start first with what is my time horizon? Then you move to, with this time horizon, what amount of risk do I think I'm comfortable with? Probably the risk someone will be comfortable with a 20-year time horizon with retirement is going to be different than a 4-year time horizon for that down payment. So you sort of have to bucket what the investment strategy and goal is before you start the implementation phase. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's really kind of we hear so often, a hot stock or a mutual fund is doing great. And it's almost that putting the cart before the horse.
Absolutely.
Idea.
That's
you really
exactly
need to step
right.
back and look at where you're trying to go.
Exactly. That's exactly the point.
So what would be some answers to common fears? You hear people that are really cautious to invest at all, but we know there's a lot of success that you can have in your long-term life plan if you are a prudent investor. So what advice would you give to some of those stories we hear again and again when people are nervous to start investing?
Well, I would say probably people forget they already are investors. Statistically, 60% of Americans participate in their 401k or 403b plans. Mm-hmm. So by the very nature of your participation in your qualified plan, you are an investor. So in that need, that would be one of those long-term investment strategies. So the most important thing when we're entering any new thing, whether it's investing or weight loss or a new hobby, become knowledgeable. Jump in and educate yourself, because once you become more educated, you're going to build your confidence. And as you build your confidence, then you'll feel more empowered to make those investment decisions.
That's exactly right. I think a lot of the concerns, things like it's just gambling, or I don't want to lose any money. With a little bit of education, you have a better understanding of how the market works, what to expect. And it gives you that confidence to move forward long term.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned a little earlier, it's all about that risk reward.
Absolutely.
And people just need to understand that, there will be risk and there will be reward.
Absolutely. Well, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to dive into. We know this is a really complex topic, but if it's got you thinking about how you are starting your investment plan, this would be a great opportunity to speak with one of our McKinley Carter advisors. Ask some questions, start that education process that Monica is talking about to build your confidence.